for us to make a fresh start for week 9. On the slide it says week 8, but it's supposed to be week 9. The time passes by very, very fast. So I hope that all of you students, friends, are healthy and happy and prosperous in your place of staying. I know that you cannot go to the campus, to the university. So without further ado, I wish the best to all of you guys, and we will start with our session week 9. And we're still studying the book by Colander, and we're still reading from that book. And we have read chapter 6 and 7 last week, which we will summarize, and then we will make a start with chapter 10. And still we have a couple of major messages to make during our course, and we will also be talking about learning theories during this session. So last time we were together, we talked about the importance of population. So we were studying the chapter demography, geography, and ecology, and how these would interplay with the social life, or how it would affect social activity within the social context. And we said, we made a couple of statements, and we said amongst many factors such as size of territory, wealth, resources, bureaucratic organization, military skills within the state, would these add up to power, or would you look at them individually? What if someone would ask you, what is power? How would you define as a political scientist what power actually means? Would you say it's the size of the territory? Would you say it's wealth? Would you say it's the raw materials like resources that are very important for the production line and for consumption, obviously as well? Or would you say bureaucratic organization? Or would it be from a realist school of thought, be based on military skills or military power? And we took a look at Organsky, who said, population is probably one of the most important factors that actually is meaningful, significant to talk in relation to the concept of power. So population is not something that as a political scientist you should put aside, but you should look at it in a balanced way with many other factors being in relationship with each other. So population is probably one of the most important factors representing power. It's not the only factor, but it is an important factor. Therefore, understanding and studying and obviously predicting sub-factors such as death rates and birth rates would be very, very essential to understand the concept of population in relation to power, as you being a political scientist, studying international relations, etc. So we want to understand these statistics, and we want to know more about these statistics. And we've seen last time that medical advances do influence death rates and birth rates. We've seen because of the medical advances, technology, that death rates have decreased. People live longer, especially when we look at Western countries that have industrialized. Those countries that have established a long, slow process of industrialization have blended in their production lines and technology along the lines of international trade, domestic trade, and international trade have established also achieved or realized actually to decrease death rates. People live longer. It has consequences. It also has consequences for economy, because the longer people live, the more they will get into pension. It will have effect on accommodation, housing, employment, pension, and all these kinds of important factors which are very, very relevant. But it also has influence on birth rates, because of the ever increasing economic activity, birth rates have obviously decreased. So we've seen that last time. So just don't just say it's just population. It's not important. It is important for states to be able to utilize power. So we're in the phase of summarizing. Last time I've shown you this slide as well. This is a fragment from the book of Organsky, World Politics. That's a book from 1957, and this is what he says. We said power is defined as the ability of a state to influence the behavior of other states in accordance with one's own ends. So it's not about wealth. It's not about all these factors, but it's a general bird's view of behavior. So if you're powerful, you can get other states to do the things that they might not want to do. So in that sense, it would mean, from a political sense, being powerful. You will come across this definition more frequently than you think. As long as you're studying political sciences and international relations, you will be faced with this definition, and it would be my recommendation to at least remember that power is an influx of various factors. So it's just all these independent factors interrelated with each other, adding up to being powerful. So another way of saying is, it's about how a state uses all these resources. And then we talked about some concepts. We talked about standardization and interchangeability, and we said that industrialization process has brought about the machine production by the thousand. So instead of producing one item by hand in a week or a month, it was possible to produce thousands of units in just one single day, and all these units would be identical. So that's what we call standardization. And it would mean that because of the standardization, the production cost would decrease. If a person would make one piece in a week, it would obviously take more manpower, and it would mean it is more expensive. So you would have to sell it for more expensive. Imagine that you have a car, the car breaks down, you need a piece, you can go to a store, buy that piece, but also you can get it made, especially for your individual needs, for your own car. So if you go for the second option, obviously it is going to cost more. But if you go for the first option, you can go to a hardware store or a car store, and you can pick up a piece, a broken piece from the shelf, and pay for that just one single piece. So it is the standardization that has made life a bit more easier. So you can substitute various parts that are broken, and that's what we mean by standardization. But it also has far-reaching consequences. Industrial revolution, or the standardization, did have consequences. We will talk about that in a second. Just a sec, I will take a sip for my coffee. I have a frog in my throat. Sorry about this. I was ill the last week, so I'm just recovering. The second concept that we talked about was interchangeability. Extending this, and interchangeability is actually about when you have a piece of hardware like a computer, a tractor, car, photocopier, photocopying machine, and the thing breaks down, you can actually buy new parts and substitute. So it's also interchangeable. All those standardization has produced identical products, and all these identical products can be substituted with each other. There's another concept. So just to elaborate on what we just talked about. So we have moved on from individual labor to machine production. And the machine that we're using, even in agriculture, actually everywhere within the economy, within the society, where you have machines, all these machines can be categorized under the standardization and interchangeability. So reducing the cost, but also making labor more cheaper in a way. So because when you have a tractor, it can do the job of probably, I don't know, 100 horses, 1,000 men, etc. So it has advantages. So this standardization and machine production, while one machine was making one part, other machines could be making other parts, and by using an assembly line. So the next word actually that we're looking for is the mass production. So mass production is due to standardization, and because we use machines, factories where we have all these production level machines, and these machines can produce on an assembly line. So an assembly line actually started during the early 20th century, where you can see on the picture on the left side of my screen, you see a whole bunch of people standing in line, and there is a belt in the middle, and on that belt there are various parts, and what happens is that all these individuals have to just assemble all these individual parts into a bigger whole. So that's actually the assembly line and the developed version of the assembly line. So this was huge for the economy. Assembly line standardization meant mass production. It meant being able to produce for much less in a very short time of span, and it meant being able to sell your product to a bigger market. So it has economical arguments. Imagine a small company in one small city producing maybe 1,000 units of that product, and only selling that within that city. Now probably can produce hundreds and thousands of those products and sell it throughout the whole globe. And so the assembly line was very important, was very significant for economy, and with the coming of the robotic production line, the second picture, the robot could produce or assemble all these individual parts even faster. And what actually happened to those individuals is that the highly skilled individual producing that one unit was replaced by the individual on the assembly line. And the individual on the assembly line is now replaced by massive robots who can do the work much faster, more efficient, and more accurately. So the level of identicalness is even higher. It's even better. So on the right side of the screen, you can see all those gloves, plastic gloves, being produced almost all identical to each other by machine production. So that's what we talked about the last time. So what's the influence on society? Let's talk about that. The effects on society of interchangeability and mass production were enormous. Individual skilled workers, on the first place, were no longer held in high esteem. So they lose position, status, right? So imagine that you're a very important person within your society, respected, wealthy, maybe according to that, conditions of that city. within, let's say the next day, you lose your position because you're replaced by a machine. And maybe you could sell your a product that you worked on for a month for very, very high prices. Now that product, same product, even better, is produced by a machine, and your salary, now that you have to stand on an assembly line, maybe your salary has decreased. So your social position has fallen, pay has fallen, and the skill level that you used to have necessary to produce that one unit has also been disappearing. So as a response, this in Europe has led to movements against the use of new machines, because machines were perceived as stealing the jobs. And this has brought about that the difference between owners and workers. So this brought about the term that we realized that we now embrace as industrialists. You could say that these economic wealthy people now have replaced the high society, the elites, the aristocrats within the society. And this has broadened the gap since the level of workers has been decreasing the pay, the social status and salary, the position and everything, and that one has been increasing. There is something we call unequal distribution. On one side, every individual has the opportunity to produce, to start for himself, which is obviously very difficult to compete with an existing corporation. But on the other side, it has widened the gap between the industrialist, the owner, and the worker. Okay, sorry guys, I'm very sorry because of my throat. Don't pay attention. Another effect of society is that this machine production, this economic advancement, has also brought about information revolution. And we're talking about information revolution in terms of computing, processing of information, which is now more quickly, efficiently, and more precisely and accurately. So when a person makes a calculation, the first time you probably won't get it right. So you have to spend some time on making simple basic calculations, but a computer can make very complex calculations and get it right the first time. So this information revolution and the coming of the computer age has also meant that people are obviously being replaced by computers, and probably you will have to work from your computer, from home. And the biggest problem for the economy is, and we have an increasing population and people not being able to get into the industry or getting available jobs, because job availability is decreasing, population is increasing. So the states, governments have to think about how do we keep the people busy. So, in my time, especially when I was young, I was able to find jobs. There were a lot of jobs, and for many people available because there was a big industry within the Netherlands, Germany, France, United Kingdom, and you name them. There were a lot of factories, but all these factories have moved by outsourcing to China or Singapore or Taiwan. And so how do you keep these people busy? I mean, where do people get their income? So there are theories. There is a Belgian theorist who says everyone, so the future of humanity should look like that every single individual from the age of 18 should get a standard income, whether they work or not work. So so there are theories of this kind now, that people are talking about. Even surfers who don't do anything besides surfing should get pay $1,000 a month. So these are new theories that people are discussing and talking about. But this is going to be a big problem for the economy because people need to work, need a job to fulfill, to get an income and pay their rent and buy bread, etc., etc. So in short, the information revolution has created billionaires and millionaires, while a big, massive pile of people are undermined, and the social stability of our societies are become fragile. A social stability is necessary to build a stable, harmonious culture, society for the future of our children and the next generations. But if if you don't feel right, if you cannot find any jobs, obviously it's going to be in jeopardy. So if you work, in the past we thought, if you go to school and if you work hard, you will receive an income, you will be able to get a job. But times are changing, and humanity needs new perspectives and new ways of looking at economy and society, because technology will keep on advancing into the future. So we have to keep up with the technological advancements, and also keep up with the intellectual way of producing new ideas for our younger generations. So it's also up to us, teachers, researchers, also students, to think about these questions. So we said, information revolution or technological advancements, population, demography, all these factors do influence social change. They bring about social change. And we talked about unequal distribution. We talked about, as a consequence, about unequal distribution, injustice, inequality, but also in terms of pollution. And pollution is a very important element in our discussions, in our debates. Ecology, preventing any further progress. I mean, do we keep on going with technological advancements, or do we slow down? And these are very relevant questions we have to think about. So change and progress often seem dangerous and disturbing. These have social and economic consequences, as we just talked about, and they can put people out of jobs and force them to seek types of employment not to their liking. And when a person does a job and the person does it because he has to or she has to, it will have the person will experience psychological issues. So it's not only society, it's not only demography, it's not only population, but it's also psychology plays a role within our social change debate. A person could experience depression, anxiety, worthlessness, or any other psychological issues that would be relevant to our discussion. We also talked about globalization, because corporations, they want to produce more and more, and there is the idea of making more profit. So and this globalization on one side is continuing, including the world, because of the production is faster and ever more, and they try to outsource to other countries because labor is cheaper. So they move their factories from the west to east, to countries such as China, and maybe in the future it will happen to Africa. And they will produce more, and because they produce more, they will seek for more profit and therefore for new markets, and this is called globalization. And the technological advancements, such as the speeding process of internet, makes it easier to follow the footsteps of corporations or other competitive industries in other countries, just in a matter of seconds and minutes. So communication does make a difference, and it just makes it more easier to globalize the economy, the society, the culture. Think of McDonald's. McDonald's was a small company in the United States, a fast food company, and it has become global. There are many examples of this kind. And because of the internet, because of the social media, it spreads very fast because people can see it on their screens and follow on TV or radio, or it used to be radio, it used to be television. Now it's the internet and social media like Instagram or tweeting. Facebook has been decreasing in popularity, but it has very great effect on globalization. And the prediction of scientists is that globalization will likely be ever more increasing and enormous in the upcoming years. So we have to anticipate on these elements. And the spread of globalization, what does it mean for societies? I mean, social scientists believe that the social class structure will deepen. It will become more profound and maybe more sharp between the small group of elite rich and the big masses of poor people. So because of this capitalist way of thinking, profit making, desire, it's inevitable for the capitalist means of production to annihilate poverty on a global scale. So even as an example, even we talked about this the last time, even China as a socialist, as a communist country, which the ideology is a classless state, has fallen victim to the capitalist means of production and has created the idea of boss and worker and class systems within the social structure. So technology strengthens this, and communism actually, according to scientists, has self-destructed because it did not develop its own technology. So only by developing an alternative technology, a state or a country would be able to divest itself from class structures. So this class structure, what does it mean? Class structure means that there is a gap between people who have wealth and those who do not. People who own the production lines and people who work for the owners of the production lines. And as long as the pay decreases and the rent of housing increases and standards of living, of buying healthy food is increasing, there's going to be an unequal distribution. So this inequality is a big problem within the United States right now. And I will give you an example. There is this, let me see if I can find the book. There is this book. This book is The Wolf at the Door, written by Ian Shapiro and Great. And this book is talking about the economic inequality at this moment. This is a new book of 2020, and in this book, The Wolf at the Door, it's been mapped out, charted, how this inequality in economy works and how this influences politics in the United States. And United States is kind of a big deal because it used to be the superpower of the world. And things have been changing for the United States, and there's going to be a very interesting future in terms of the relationship between China and the United States and Russia, and obviously European Union, and somewhere in between there, Turkey is going to be very interesting in those terms. But it all comes down to basically social society, economy, politics, and international relations. So it's going to be very interesting, people. But this inequality is big, is a big problem. And economic activities are those activities concerned with making a living. I mean, you should be able to make a living, right? And they necessarily play a major role in every culture. As I just told you, their character is largely determined by three factors. This is what we talked about the last time. There are three factors that you should consider for economic activity. So first of all human beings have wants. We want things, right? I mean, you want a nice jumper, a nice car, maybe a house, a job. You want to get married. You want to have build a family. Maybe you want to have a degree. You want to become an academician, etc. But it should be possible to be able to do all these things. And if you cannot do it and someone else in the same street, in the same neighborhood is able to do it, I mean, you would compare yourself with that person, right? So there is also this comparison going on. But we have innate desires, we want things. And that's how economy comes into existence. So the second factor that guides economic activity is the availability of resources. Are there resources to make these ones available to people? So economic goods such as food, clothing, housing, and weapons cannot be created out of nothing. I mean, you cannot just snap your finger and there will be resources, there will be goods, the things that you want. So what do you have to do to get these wants? You got to produce. You have to make things available. You have to have the resources. I mean, you cannot dream about it, right? I have a dream. It only works if you work for it. So the third factor controlling economic activity is technology, meaning knowledge of how to use resources to produce desirable goods, including services. Both the technology of a society and the economic activities in which its people engage are greatly influenced, though by no means wholly determined by the extent to which various natural resources are available. So you need technology. Think of plowing the earth by horsepower, or think plowing the earth by a tractor. Which one would you prefer? But you have to have a tractor to be able to do that. So to be able to build a tractor, you need technology, and you have to keep on advancing the technology, but it has consequences. For the one who produces the tractor, it makes money. For the one who makes the tractor, gets a salary, a wage, which keeps on decreasing because the person is being replaced by machines, by robots, and robotic production. I mean, robot doesn't need to pay rent, it doesn't need to eat, it doesn't have to take any breaks, it doesn't need light, etc., etc. So all these are intertwined with each other. And the usage. So the main key element here is, how do you use the available resources and technology? And if it's not available, how do you get them, right? So power is essential. So also Colander, just like Organsky says, power is essential, but even a modern economy, which is industrialized, cannot make extensive use of power unless substantial amounts of power producing resources are available. So you're dependent on these elements to be powerful, to produce for your people, to make jobs, employment for your own citizens. Furthermore, the methods used to generate this amount of power are dependent on the availability of resources, but also costs. The cost is if the cost is very high, so that's why we keep on advancing in technological terms, because if I can lecture you from the Netherlands, where I live, by just buying a laptop, and I can do this 14 times, I get my money out. I mean, if I every time have to fly to Turkey to give you a lecture, it's going to be more devastating to the ecology, and it's going to be devastating for my economy. I mean, I will have to pay for it, right? And so you have to think about the cost-benefit calculation every time. And then there is inequality, obviously. I wanted to remind you about the Capuchin monkeys. If you think about the movie last time about the Capuchin monkeys, there were two monkeys, and these two monkeys. So I was supposed to have the video here, right here, but I cannot. I'm not going to change it right now. So, what that film video told us was that if the Capuchin monkey gets the grape, or let me put it another way. If there would be one monkey and it would constantly get a cucumber, it wouldn't have any problems. But the moment that the another monkey, equally same in status, gets a grape and this one gets a cucumber, it's a problem. So you wouldn't have any problem when a person who's not equal to you in age, experience, maybe social position, a person who's higher for your perspective, let's say a doctor who earns 10,000 Turkish liras wouldn't be a problem for you. But the moment that you have a student colleague, and that student gets 1,000 Turkish liras every month from the state, and you only get 300 Turkish liras from the state, you would compare yourself to your equal, right? So that's a problem, and that would create inequality. So people generally are not angry because there is a rich person, industrialist, producing materials. I mean, we think, well, this person is doing that and it's not really my league, and you don't essentially compare yourself to a director, to the director, or a person who's doctor, engineer, or architect, but you compare yourself to the person who has equally the same conditions. So, and that creates problems, and that's injustice. That's being perceived as injustice. So it gets even more complicated when people cannot get into jobs or cannot apply for available jobs. So that's a big problem, and inequality in economic terms, in social terms, and in political terms is very, very essential to the human existence in our countries and states. So let's talk about psychology and behavior, and we will be talking about a bit about psychological aspects, approaches. So the first one would be the cognitive approach. Cognition focuses on nature, or on thoughts of human beings as the initiator and determinant actor of behavior. So your behavior, the cognitive approach says that your behavior as an individual comes from your thoughts. So it comes from your ideas and thoughts. And this approach, human actions represents, according to this approach, human actions represent reactions to physical processes in the brain. And cognitive science, the scientific study of the mind, is looked for explanations of behavior. So there is a correlation between ideas, the mind of the cognitive processes and behavior. So if you, as a political researcher, would look into cognitive approaches, you would approach your research from this aspect, and you would look essentially to ideas in relation to politics or maybe other fields of thought, religion, maybe. What the ideas are, and these ideas. Let's give an example. If I want to study whether religiosity of Muslims in the Netherlands has influence on the way they vote, I would look from a cognitive perspective to their ideas. I would measure their religiosity. I pray 5 times a day, and then I would use Likert scales. For example, I agree very much, agree, neutral, disagree, disagree very much. And if a person says, I extremely agree, I pray 5 times a day, then I would ask them, what do you vote every 4 years in the Netherlands? So I can see that religiosity in terms of cognitive aspects, the ideas or the belief systems, I can make predictions on the next time how they would vote in terms of political sciences, right? So, and then there is the psychoanalytical approach, and this looks at the unconscious. So this is about the unconscious processes, the emotional aspect. So, so would you rather say that the person is cognitive? Would you rather say, so in a way, rational? So would you say a person votes because it's rational? There is a rational actor model. For example, that model says that people are essentially the same everywhere in the world? So they would be logical in their behavior, or would you say that they're emotional in their behavior? I mean, it depends on what kind of perspective you want to use in your research, right? So this psychoanalytical approach says that it's rather the emotions than, for example, other things that are explanatory as an independent variable for how you would predict behavior of individuals. Another approach, this is 1900s. Behavioralist approach says that it's about the way people behave. So they look at behavior. So they don't look at the thoughts or the emotions, but this approach looks at behavior. Let me give you an example. For example, let me see this one. So behavioralism says something about about behavior. And if I want you to do something that I want you to do, I could reward you, right? So, or I could punish you. So a classical teacher, so this is classical teaching. A teacher, if a teacher says you do it exactly the way I do it, that's behavioralist. So that means there is only one truth, and the truth of the teacher. So the teacher tells the student what they should do. So this is 1900s. This is classical system. And imagine this is an experiment about operant conditioning. So it's about conditioning your behavior. And if you do exactly, if this mouse would do exactly what I want it to do, it will be rewarded by food, for example. But if the mouse doesn't do what I want the mouse to do, and I would consider it as wrong behavior, and I would punish it. So think of Pavlov, the Pavlov effect. You must have heard it. There was an experiment during the 20s, the 30s, I think, and this researcher takes a dog, and there is a light bulb, and every time that the dog was going to get food, the light bulb first would go off. So the dog starts to associate food with the light. So every time the light goes on, the dog thinks I'm going to get food. And the next time, after conditioning the dog, they only put on the light, but they don't give food. Every time the dog sees the light go on, it starts to get watery mouth. So it thinks of I'm going to get food. So that's what I mean by behavioralism. So there is only one way of doing things good. But we have moved a long ways from this kind of learning, this kind of teaching, because we don't punish people. It would be physical abuse, and we don't reward people because they do the things that they do what I want them to do. But what we actually, and we talked about cognitivism. It's about the cognitive effects. But there is another one which I'm a big fan of constructivism. And constructivism is based on the idea that individuals or students actively construct themselves. So I'm not a teacher. I'm kind of a guide. You could say a guide, a coach who thinks with you. So I'm not teaching you. You are learning yourself from a constructivist point of view, and you're actually free in how you actively engage in your learning process. So I'm not looking at your cognitive, your thoughts and ideas. I don't value or judge you by your thoughts and values. I don't judge you by your behavior. But I don't judge you by your emotions, but I judge you by your skills, your own personal skills. You keep on learning and learning and learning and learning by yourself, and you keep your own progress and development in check. So your own personal experiences are more important, and basically learners use their previous knowledge as a foundation and build on it with new things that you learn. So everyone's individual experiences make their learning unique to them. So your learning experience is unique to you. So constructivism is crucial to understand because it influences the way students learn. The theory posits that students bring their own unique experiences. So your experiences are different than mine, and my experiences are different than most of many other people, because we come from different societies and we have different ideas, emotions, and value systems, and so it's unique, right? To the classroom every day. Their background and previous knowledge impacts how they are able to learn. Educators are able to use constructivist learning theories to help their students understand their previous knowledge. So it's not my job to tell you what to know, whether you should study or not. It's your responsibility to study and pass your exam, or keep your deadlines in check. But I'm there for your questions. If you have questions, you can always discuss these questions with your guides and coaches and teachers, etc. But it's so knowledge, we consider, from a constructivist perspective, knowledge is constructed. So it's a social construct, right? So this is the basic principle, meaning that knowledge is built upon other knowledge. Students take pieces and put them together. So you take a theory, you take it all apart, you understand the individual pieces, and you put it back together in your own unique way, building something different than what another student maybe would build. The student's previous knowledge, experiences, beliefs, and insights are all important, considered as important, equally important, and to be foundations for their continued learning, because you need to be motivated from your own perspective. And you're not going to be motivated, or I cannot change people. I mean, there is always a psychology. So if I say, you now change, do this, you will resist. People will resist, and there will be a wall. But people will change, you will change because you want to, because you see a benefit, right? Because it's rational, it's only logical that if you think about it and you experience and you evaluate in your own personal mind that something, whether to do something or not, would benefit you or not, would benefit the society or not. I mean, it would, from a positive perspective, be constructive to approach learning that way, because you will not learn if I force you. You will not read this book because I told you to read it. Well, I can suggest it because I really like the book. And it makes us understand how society works. So, what it means, constructivism means that people, students and teachers, individuals, people want to know what the meaning of life is. I mean, why do you exist? What's the purpose of your existence on Earth? And this is from the beginning of humanity, this is a very essential question. So we're moving slowly to religion, right? But, you want meaning. And whether a person, I live in the Netherlands, and there are people who are Catholic, Protestant, and most people are atheist, agnostics. They have questions about existence of human beings. And there are many social scientists. But, I live in a society which is very, very diverse. So there are many types of and kinds of people who engage various meanings to life processes. I live in a society where we have euthanasia, for example. Ever heard of euthanasia? Euthanasia is when a person wants to get out of life. They go to a hospital, they make arrangements with a doctor, with an ethical specialist and a law person, a lawyer maybe, and they make arrangements to end their life on a date that they want to leave life, for example. And at this moment, there's research going on because many young people within the Western countries want to leave life when they're 18, 19, and 20. and they want to be euthanized and leave life, which is obviously a big debate, which is a big discussion. I mean, when you're young, 20 years old, it's why would you want to do that? So these people have their own reason to think, to be to be engaged with death, but if they don't get the opportunity to be euthanized, they stand in front of a train, and that's something you don't want either. So it's a big debate. It's a big social dilemma. It's a matter of life and death. These are the topics and debates that we find ourselves in meaning. What is the meaning of life? For example, if a student is learning the chronology of dates for a series of historical events, at the same time they are learning the meaning of chronology. I mean, this is a different type of meaning, obviously, but it's meaning as well. If a student is writing a paper about history, you want to know why you're doing that, right? So what's the meaning? And you can only get a taste of that meaning if you understand the grammar, the rules, the values and norms, as well as other things. And so meaning kind of is a big deal. How you interpret life, society, culture, religion, it all comes together. And it's a big deal. So learning is a social activity. We're still dealing a little bit about constructivism, and then we will move on. Learning is directly associated to our connection with other people. So we're social beings, and being connected to other people in the classroom, for example, does help us understand life, understand what we're doing, and where we want to end up in, maybe a couple of years, what kind of a job you would like to do. You would love to have that choice, but you don't always get the luxury to make a choice of what you should do in life. It would increase tremendously the meaning, the self-realization, self-reliance of an individual. So don't think that Europe is that way. It's not. I mean, there was a research, a decade ago that 60-70% of people living in the Netherlands don't do the job they want to do. They do things that they hate, actually, and there is a lot of resistance to that kind of life. So there is a lot of unhappiness and meaningless lives, etc., etc. So there is a lot of suicide. Educators are more likely to be successful. So I would be more successful from a scientific point of view, as I understand the peer involvement, the involvement relationship with you and other students. Is key in learning, because you learn more from your student colleagues than from a teacher, for example. Isolating learning isn't the best way to help students learn and grow together. Progressive education recognizes that social interaction. So social interaction and communication is essential in learning. So conversation, interaction, and group applications help students retain their knowledge. Okay. This is another one. Constructivism also looks at learning as contextual. Students don't learn in isolated facts. So only one fact, this, but you cannot relate it to something else. It doesn't really help you. But if you can bring all those facts together in a theory, try to relate it to your own life, your own experiences, you try to connect it to yourself and others, it will start to make meaning, and that's how you will remember and stay connected to the facts and experiences, and make learning a vivid experience, which is constructive to you, which is helpful to you, which is beneficial to you, and that will motivate you. Personal progress, it will motivate you. You will stay positive, and you will want to know more. Because you're motivated to do it, because you see the benefit of the positive change. Let me see. We have approximately a couple more minutes. So motivation, we talked about. Motivation is essential, and once you're unmotivated in a learning environment, you don't want to participate. That's quite logical, right? So why would you participate in something that it doesn't really benefit you? It wouldn't make any sense. But there's always a cost-benefit ratio calculation for the individual to participate, and it would be best to participate when you really want to engage in learning and engage with your peers and friends and teachers, etc. So motivation is very, very important. Motivation is key in learning. And the fun part is that you can motivate yourself. You can motivate yourself when you think of the future. Think of a future that you want to be part of, and think, this is why I want to do this, and this is how it relates to my future, and it will motivate you undoubtedly, because a person without hope doesn't want to live. So you need hope and motivation to live and make something of a great life. Life will be good. So sharing knowledge is important. The teacher as a facilitator, helping the student to realize its own potential, is important, and giving the field to students to make something with their own experiences is very important for a teacher to activate students. So this is a pyramid. We call it the Maslow's pyramid. And Maslow had this theory of what we call, at the top of the pyramid, the self-actualization. And at the bottom, you have the basic physiological needs: food, air, shelter, and so on. So if a person, every time a person can realize the layer, it will move into the next layer. So if a person has met its basic physiological needs, it has food, air, shelter, salary, job, etc., and the next one would be safety and security. I mean, you would immediately start thinking about, the survival, safety. Am I safe? Is my family safe? And is it secure? Those secure needs, you would try to address those needs. And the next one would be, obviously, when you feel safe and secure, you would try to, according to Maslow's theory, try to meet the need of love and belonging, marriage, maybe, etc. Starting a family. And if that's been met, a person is satisfied with all these previous layers, it would start to look at self-esteem needs. So self-esteem, positive confidence, positive self-image. You would want to feel good. And the last one would be self-actualization. So let's take a look at what we mean by all these layers. So self-actualization, let's start with that, because the other ones are a bit simpler to understand. But self-actualization is actually the level of human achievement in which one is well adjusted to one's reality. So it says adjusted to your own reality. So it doesn't mean if you're rich, if you're poor. It says being adjusted to one's social reality. So if the social reality is where everyone is in a way interrelated to each other, it could be self-actualization. It could be you being adapted to that, adjusted to that, is what Maslow understands under self-actualization. So this is the highest level one can reach, according to Maslow. A person need not be famous. I mean, if you'd be famous, it doesn't really mean that you're well adjusted. There are many famous people who commit suicide. I mean, they have the house, they have the money, they have the riches, the wealth, the prosperity. But why would you commit suicide? I mean, it doesn't really make sense, does it? So so being famous is not a criterion, or being the best in your field is not. It's not a criteria, and in order to be self-actualized. So rather, we are self-actualized when content with life and capable of handling the problems that all of us must face. So this is a very important definition in Colander, in your book about psychology, because self-actualization, that last bit of the pyramid, comes when a person is capable of handling the problems. And if you cannot handle your problems, because there will always be problems, it's different than you being done injustice. That's different. But there will always be problems. But if you can deal with these problems, essentially, adapt to this way of working, you would self-actualize. Imagine that there are many problems, and most young people have difficulty in solving these problems, and they get into this emotional interplay. They're not 5, 6 emotions. There are maybe thousands of emotions, and when it comes in you, it comes in a not only you don't if you feel fear, it's not only fear, it's also sadness, maybe it's also worthlessness, it's also maybe being unmotivated, etc. There are many emotions, and the problem is, how do you solve these problems? Yes, I will share these slides in the student portal again, and I will make sure that you get your grades, because I didn't know that I had to do something. I thought that you knew your own grades, so I will go after them today. People, I wish you good luck, and we will see each other next week, Friday morning, for a 10th session. Thank you very much, and see you guys next week. We'll continue, by the way. Thank you, guys. You're welcome. Bye-bye.